there's all human beings here. Yep, all humans. And yet the way we're wired up, the way we're hooked up is so completely different than the other person. Just have a conversation with anybody and spend 90% of the time listening, and you'll find out how really different that person is than you are. If it's more like 50-50, you probably won't find out too much. Listening is the most is the part of communication that is not emphasized a lot. Anything else? Other questions, since we're doing some questions? Yes?
One from Bailey up in Grand Rapids.
It's Bailey.
She asks, why do you suggest the practices that don't bring in negativity into ourselves rather than Tonglen?
Sometimes the wanting to bring in negativity or following a teaching of bringing in negativity is not is just as a rote practice, is not really considering it's kind of treating everybody very similar. It's not really looking at each specific person. So before I teach anybody Tonglen, I would really want to talk to them quite a bit, so I can see that if the negativity that they're trying to draw into themselves, see what that is. Sometimes people do that because they want to be a person who's helping, and so therefore they get a little credential out of doing. Oh, I just did a half-hour Tonglen. I'm really giving myself up to others. I'm really helping others. So quite often there's a little bit of that is happening. So I would say, and some people are just naturally generous. Their whole life is about helping others. They just naturally are helping people. Other people are kind of go the other direction. Then you have all the nuances in between. And then there's all of the areas where doing something gets mixed up with an accomplishment or a credential. Like as I said, if you're doing Tonglen correctly, you'll never know it. Because if you know it, that means you've gotten a credential from it, and that means you haven't actually given out that. It has to be it has to be giving out with no return. No, it's not a merchandising mentality. You're completely giving out. This doesn't mean that you might not have things happen that may look like a feeling of success or accomplishment. You wouldn't fight with those and try to be a person who had no credentials. It's very subtle sometimes. That's why it's so important to, from my point of view, don't do anything unless you have to. And then if other people want to accuse you of being lazy, that's all right. You have a question? You should have. Yes, sir.
What's the intent behind taking in negativity without sort of giving anything back? What's
the idea again, please?
What's the purpose
behind what?
Behind Tonglen, behind doing that?
So you could say that someone who's teaching or studying or learning or practicing Tonglen, the idea is to take the ego form that wants to keep the good stuff, get rid of the bad stuff, to switch it around, and so that it causes puts ego in kind of a starvation mode. The self-centeredness doesn't get the kind of fuel it would like to get. So it's just a practice. But I think the best practice to do, as far as my understanding is, you listening?
Yeah.
Best practice is to see to look at the mind, watch the thoughts that come and go, strengthen the awareness, rather than to come up with some arbitrary way of sending and receiving. I'm not arguing with Shanti Deva or Atisha or Longchenpa or all the other lamas that think, including Hamachodra. I say if you feel drawn to do this, go ahead and do it. I just don't particularly promote it. Mainly because identity is so discontinuous, you don't know what kind of negative energy is coming this way. It's a very complicated universe. We're not the only ones here. Yes.
Question from Shane out in Santa Ana, California. He asks, you say find out who you are. With the consciousness moving and changing, do you ever come to the end of your quest to find out who you are?
Of course you do. Of course. That's your only question?
So far.
Of course you come to the end of it.
How do you come to the end of it?
When you give up the search. If you're searching, then you create a searcher. And the search is based on the assumption there's something else going on around the corner that you're missing out on. You need to get to that. You need to understand that. So we keep, it's called craving, desire, wanting something, wanting things to be different than they are. This is how they are, and this is it. I often say what you're looking for, you're looking at. You're looking at what you're looking for right now. The problem with that is you're actually looking at it, but you have projections on top of it. And the projections on top of it are kind of filtering your ability to see what is fundamentally true. Michael?
Is all wanting develop some kind of projection?
It
When
can,
you say like, I want to be your friend.
or
is
I
that-
want pumpkin pie.
Yeah, or pumpkin pie.
It's not pumpkin, it's punkman.
Pumpkin? Yes, sir.
Everybody pronounces that wrong, I'm not sure why. What's your question?
Is wanting, just any level of it is
It could be. Wanting things to be different than they are is it, but this doesn't mean you get rid of desire. It just means that the desire starts to become free-floating and it doesn't support an identity or self. There's no one behind the desire anymore. So it's self, as said, it's self-liberated. It's self-liberated. It doesn't have any kind of connection to I want this, so therefore this is happening, now that's happening. It's just another concept to use. Further questions? Did we lose a big segment of really important teaching there? Thea?
So in practicing Tonglen, is it helpful to think in just saying I'm taking in negativity doesn't really mean that you are, just means your mind is saying I'm taking in negativity. Would it be helpful to think of someone who you have a personal connection to, who's suffering and, you know, specifically taking that negativity as opposed to just taking in negativity?
So I think it's done, always is done that way. You can actually, like I did for my stepfather who was dying, and I was doing Tonglen at the moment he died. And I said I felt like part of him jumped out of him and into me. Whether it did or not, I don't know, and I'm not concerned. But you could do Tonglen just for a specific person if you're going to do Tonglen. You can also do it for the refugees in Syria. You could do it for the people, anybody who seems to be in a lot of distress, or people who seem to be crazy, like, they shall go nameless. I'm not going to mention that person's name. But you could do Tonglen if you wanted to, but be very, very my recommendation is do a lot of sitting meditation. Clarify your mind so that when you do start taking negativity, it just isn't about something about you wanting to be someone who takes in negativity or have a good feeling about and trying to take their negativity away. Do you follow me a little bit? So do it if it seems to be important to do that. A little bit tentative about it rather than jump right into it. And a lot of sitting practice as a foundation. If you're gonna do it for 5 minutes, but sit a half an hour before and sit a half an hour after. And spend, half a minute or so just seeing just blue sky, and before you start the sending and receiving. And when you start it, start with yourself. Any negativity you have that you've been trying to get rid of all day, just look at it and just take it in. Start with yourself. Anything that is positive, even the success of taking in the negativity, that should be given away. So you never, the more you do it, you just never feel like you're getting anywhere. People who feel like they're doing Tonglen correctly, probably not.
Sorry.
Yes.
Can Tonglen be dangerous or a detrimental practice if in any way?
I think there's a possibility of that. That's one of the reasons from doing this. I just didn't come up with this last week, but from looking at this over a long period of time, like I said, I stopped teaching it 10, 15 years ago. And I wasn't sure why at the time, but the more I work with people, the more I see that taking in negativity may not be a good approach for some people. It'd be all right to send out positive emotions, feelings, healing to others as an activity, but actually the whole sending and receiving thing is, and I don't mean to be disagreeing with the whole Buddhist tradition, I'm not saying that. I say, if you feel like this works for you and you want to do this, and even as a teacher, if you're a meditation teacher, someone watching possibly, I'm not saying what you're doing is incorrect at all. But I think there's a possibility in some cases. This could be very difficult. Depends on the individual, depends on the person. The causes and conditions that arise as any given manifestation of a human being are very, very complicated. Karma is extremely complicated. It's like the glomeruli in your kidneys. You probably would get further counting the glomeruli. Let me know what you come up with. Yes?
What is it about ego that causes so much problems for desires or any other delusion?
Well, it's a grasping at a self. It's a grasping at someone who's going to win, and or grasping at someone else who's wrong or someone who's right. The constant separation of ourself and others. We're over here and they're over there. And the realization, what shows up in the realization is we're not separate from anyone. And that's when that comes out of emptiness, and that's when compassion begins to arise. Compassion without a compassionator. No one's there being compassionate. That kind of compassion is relative to what Bodhicitta has talked about in Atisha's 7 points of mind training. And you can do that. I don't mean to take exception with Atisha. Profound teacher. I'm a nobody. He was a great teacher. But I'm just saying that what seems to be important to me from doing this a while myself and talking to others is sit down, hold still, and watch what moves. Because what moves for you personally is not what's happening with someone else. If you take your life from now on, you don't have to be a Buddhist, take your life and spend some time just holding still and watching what's moving. You will slowly get to know yourself in a very, very deep way. Somebody's talking to me. It's probably Atisha. Rattling the windows. Thank
How does a practice like Tonglen function differently than driving all blames into one?
So there's a similarity there, the idea of driving all blames into one. But what you're doing there is you're just seeing that everything is without blame. That any kind of blaming that's going on is such a partial thing that it isn't helpful to, even though you see, well, he did this or she caused that, and instead of going in, the obvious thing is they caused it, and it's like, duh, they did that, so why should I drive all blames into one? is what you're actually doing is seeing that everything is coming from the same source. You know, you could say, you could do it personally and say, I'll take the blame for that, which isn't necessarily taking the negativity, but it's just, I'll take the blame for that. And it isn't something you would necessarily advertise. You wouldn't necessarily come out and say to the person, I'll take the blame. But it would be an interior practice more than anything. Follow me? More? Further questions? Yes.
Earlier you were talking about when we seek to know something or to understand something and then we think we have it and we kind of put the blinders on and
Yes.
that becomes our point of reference. Why do we do that?
Because we'd rather be a person who knows, and this gives us proof that we know, like an opinion. Sometimes we'll sit in a coffee shop or anywhere and say we'll tell somebody what we think, and they'll say, what's your opinion about that? As if opinions somehow have some kind of inherent validity. They don't. They're all based on causes and conditions that are incomplete. You can never have all of the evidence for to take any position. You can have a whole lot of it, but there's always something missing somewhere. And so we see this happen in our personal life all the time. Things are constantly in flux. More? I have more to say if you have more to ask.
Not right now.
Okay. Yes.
Kevin Townley in New York.
Kevin Townley in New York.
He asks, when we do feel desire arise with strings attached, is it best to refrain from activity?
I feel that if you can do that, it's to just hold still and watch what happens. Because everything is fluctuating and changing, and especially if you can hold still, this seems to be helpful. It's not that you couldn't move into action, but as soon as we do that, it's like, you know, you're starting to set up all kinds of groundwork for all kinds of other things to come along. So, insofar as you can, hold still. It's called patience, simply put. Things start to move and we feel the tug to go into action, don't do it. Wait, no, look at that pull. Look at what that pull is. See what that is. And wait. And then at some point you may have to move into some situation or do something or say something or start a particular approach or protocol or conversation or activity. Yes, Suzanne, what were you going to ask?
So if we're inherently not separate from suffering, then how does taking in suffering during Tonglen, how can that be like something maybe not so smart to do?
So my idea around that is if you need to do that, or if you feel called to do that, then I wouldn't stand in your way or tell you not to particularly, but I don't promote it like is often done all over the place. Actually, it's promoted. I wouldn't do that. I would go slower. I would say do a lot of sitting practice. See if you really need to do that. Just look at your motivation for doing Tonglen. So that's how I would say that. And also, as I said before, identity is discontinuous. So there's consciousness is appearing in all kinds of ways. Even disembodied consciousness comes and goes all the time. It's all over the place. Doesn't have a particular body in this realm, in this physical realm. And that's not something to believe, or is it something to disbelieve? Don't do anything with it, but you could consider it. Kevin?
How do we recognize when these consciousnesses come and go? Is there a defining aspect to when one arises and when one falls away? You'll
see it more clearly the more you do sitting practice of meditation. there'll be more and more, as the way I like to talk about it it's like there's more and more blue sky and less clouds. And when there are clouds, it's more clear what's actually coming up. And you're able to actually watch it come up and watch it pass away, or watch it come up and see that it can't get a foothold anywhere. It goes down. It's like being able to be so present that you can have highly negative emotions pass through, or highly dark clouds pass through that blue sky and not leave one single mark on it anywhere. Clouds don't leave traces unless it's a jet plane. And even those disappear. More?
How are these different from what we consider thoughts?
Very similar. So it's hard to know what the actual structure of a thought is. We see them, we all agree we have them. You could say that I'm having thoughts right now, but not many. How are you doing?
In general?
Yeah.
I'm a little sleepy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not because of you.
Oh, I hope not. I hate to put you to sleep. I'm trying to get you to wake up. Sheldon.
Seems like it would be easy to look at this Tonglen as something to believe that something is happening when you're doing this.
Yeah.
So how do we approach this as something to believe, either believe or not believe? Is it something that we can do before we do that, so that we're kind of having that frame of mind?
I think sitting meditation helps you more and more put you in a space of just being aware. And if you're just being aware, this means the so-called muscle-bound thought patterns are further back in priority. What the priority is aware. You're just here. You're aware of colors, shapes, smells. All the six sense fields, including the mind, are all are incredibly present. And anything it wants to add on to that, it's by way of thinking or some kind of paranoia or worry or concern or anything. It's hard for it to get too much press there. It's going to get some because you're not shutting anything out. But you're here. You're breathing. You feel. You're not forgetting gravity. A good idea to not forget gravity. So you're just very present. More?
So does that mean that having a stronger awareness possibly makes the Tonglen a more effective practice?
I don't know. So I don't promote Tonglen, even though I certainly practiced it a lot, and I also taught it a lot. But I just did it because I was told to do that. I didn't do it, and now I don't do things because I'm told to do them. I do it because it's choiceless. I have to do that. I have to do this. I don't make decisions anymore. Probably looks like it, but I don't. Like if I see pumpkin pie, I don't say, should I have some pumpkin pie or not? It's choiceless. Of course I have pumpkin pie. So I don't mean to make light of that. I'm just saying that when the awareness is really primary, then the thought process may come in and kind of elbow its way in on occasion, but it doesn't last very long, and it doesn't have the sway, doesn't have the clarity of the awareness. The awareness is so amazingly clear when thought patterns are in their place where they should be, as a tool of the awareness, not as leading. When the thought process gets out in front, then we're operating out of paranoia. I don't want to make any mistakes. How do I look? What do other people think about what I'm thinking? That sounds silly, but we really sometimes operate out of other people's thought patterns, what they think about what we're thinking. And it's not that will go away particularly. It may and it may not. But what actually, eventually, through the awareness practice, what one eventually sees through is that there's no solid person here anymore. And so therefore, Nice. Nice. You don't have to fret about winning or losing, or birth or death, or praise or blame. There's no strong consideration about that. More? Michael?
Can you use it as a practice to empty the mind,
What?
the Tonglen? Can you use it as a practice to empty?
Not that I know of, no. So for, again, I'll say one more time, I'm not recommending Tonglen. I'm saying that if you read about it, it's all over the place. Read about it. As I said, Pema Chodron's written all kinds of books on it. So this is the first time I think I've given a talk on Tonglen in many, many years. I don't think I've ever even given one. And I've only given one recently because I see it come up when I've had people ask me questions about it. So I'm thinking it might be time to say something else.
Shane from California asks, are you meddling when you practice Tonglen?
I can see where the question would come from, and that's a possibility, but I think, you could say you're meddling when you're doing Maitri Bhavana, wishing people well, hoping people are healthy. What if those who are behind the whole thing with the evil people, right? Evil. Talked about those before. I have to give a talk on evil people these days. I'm just saying that there may be some of that there, but that's not something I would be too concerned about, that part of it. Any other questions before we close? Any other online? Anyone else? Anyone who hasn't asked a question? Okay, thank you so much. There's the book I meant to, Training the Mind, Cultivating a Loving-Kindness. If you want to read about this, that's the book. I meant to hold that up. By Chogyam Trungpa.
In the back of our chant books is the dedication of merit. And also would like to remind everybody we do have donation boxes in the hallway, and also you're welcome to donate online via PayPal. Go to our website. We gladly accept your donations.
May merit bliss penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. San Shi Shihu Shi Son Wu Sa Moko Sa Moko Ja Oromi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, its buildings, garden, and all adjoining areas from any and all dark or negative energy. Remove and dissolve any negative energy or devices. Fill everything and everyone with light. Please shield and protect with light our teachers, monks, students, and all practitioners of the Dharma, our families and friends from negative forces and energy from now on. Help us to realize the truth of the Buddha's teachings.